introduce you to Rajeshwari Mopala and Parna. Rajeshwari is currently working at the role of Technical Product Manager for cloud-based solutions. Her current role involves building innovative product in HXM landscape in the whole hire to retire process. She also has successfully played roles of solution architect for SAP's cloud-based solutions, managed complete product life cycles from conception to feedback. So we are glad to have you, Rajeshwari, and thank you for moderating the session for us. Over to you.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have Parna Paul with us. Hi, Parna. So she's working for Nudge Institute, and she has around close to 10 plus years of experience in the same building products. And she's having a great. I think she spent good amount of time in product management, program management, and also being part of the SaaS journey. And she has good amount of experience in working with cross-functional teams, which builds B2B products. And she's also been a social enterprise support, and she's been she's a community member for that as well. And she's also part of a lot of non-profit organizations and part of the women leadership. So welcome, Parna.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. Good to see all of you. Before we get started though, very first thing about product management is to understand your users, not users so much, but my audience, just a feeler to know who you all are. Can I get a show of hands? How many of you are engineers? I should be asking the other way around. How many of you are not engineers? Oh, okay. Interesting. Because we have like 5 or 6 people. If you can quickly tell me, what do you do currently? We can start here. Brilliant. You? Perfect. I could see 3 hands there. Wonderful. Oh, okay. So we have product and engineers. Brilliant. Next question. How many of you are from B2B products and how many of... Okay, let's just stick with that. We'll get to the next. Okay, B2B-ish. Remaining, are you guys like B2C products? Show of hands, please. B2B2C. Oh, yeah, that's... Okay, got it. And final question. How many of you are here because you're trying to either get into or you're there but you want to climb the ladder in big MNCs first? Show of hands, please. Big MNCs. Okay. How many of you are, say, Series C, D, E kind of startups? A few. Okay. Early stage startups. 2 risk takers, 3 risk takers. Good. Okay, wonderful. Now that I do get a general sense, what I do understand is it's kind of skewed towards people with engineering background. B2B, either in it or want to be in it, and also MNCs. So I'm going to try and cater my questions to that. I spent 8 years at Oracle. I think somewhat qualified to do that. But if people have specific questions around either, say, a CDCD startup kind of a place or even 0 to 1 experience, I can take those separately. Okay?
Cool. Okay, let's begin. So we'll have audience question, keep adding on, but I'd start with a few of my questions that I would like to ask. I myself have been transitioned from an engineering background to product management. So IPL gave me a forum to do that. Thankful to the team here. So let's begin. So I'm sure you've been in Oracle for a long time and you resonate. I also resonate very much with enterprise products. So typically, so as a hiring manager, what do you look for? So I would like to segregate a little bit here. Okay, so there is APM and there is a PM and there is a senior PM. So what qualifications, if I were somebody here who's just like 2 to 4 years of experience, when they come and they apply for a company, for a B2B company, as a hiring manager, what do you look for in candidates? Or what are the skill set that will make you feel that he's a good person to be hired as an assistant product manager?
Got it. This answer is going to be slightly nuanced, primarily because it would actually depend on the product itself. Even in like very established MNCs, you will have cash cow products which are like doing exceptionally well. They don't like iterate really fast, but the idea is you have to keep it stable. You have to make sure there are incremental features which are getting rolled out. Then you will have innovation labs where they're just going to throw in things and see how that is going to pan out. Especially in innovation lab kind of a thing. If an APM is coming in, that person has to be like very, very good at breaking down product problem statements and working about it. A good or a safe place to start for most APMs would actually be around a stable product. Then you can watch others and learn from there. So if I'm hiring for an APM, most probably will not be for an experimental product unless I can see like they absolutely have the ability to take anything and break it down to its core. Otherwise, if it is on a stable product, then you should have the ability to first start with asking the why. Like, why should I be building it? Why is this problem even a true problem? And then you start building on top of that by putting in like, okay, these are the possible solutions that can come in, and then I should be able to prioritize that. That is something I would expect from an APM. From a PM, I would expect them to be a lot sharper about their ability to prioritize. And from senior PM onwards, depending on if that organization, like what kind of objectives that you have, if it's a revenue goal or if it is... in a lot of cases, it's more about market expansion. So if those are the goals that they have, I would want them to start thinking in those lines. They will not necessarily make those business decisions at SPM kind of a level. It will come from effectively like their director or a VP, but they need to go in there and present like, if we have revenue as a goal, then how do we go about it? So for a APM level or PM level, like an entry level, I would say just understanding how to look at that problem and say, why is this a problem? Recognize who the users are, listing down possible solutions for it, and some sense of how to prioritize it.
Sure. I get that. So you just touched upon, so I would stick to the second and the third a little more, because I'm assuming the audience minimum, I think here is coming after 4 years or around 3+ years of experience. So you just mentioned about if you're given a goal or there's a vision or a product vision or there's some strategic acumen. So how do you gauge this, or what kind of questions will you put out to the person? Or as a person, if I'm being interviewed, what should I actually tell to impress, or, to kind of give you a sense that I'm able to think or align my thoughts towards what you're asking?
Okay. I'm going to go with the fact that this is for a PM level person.
Sure, yeah.
Right. If you have a problem statement, and we can do one here if you're up for it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. I'll take a standard product, a B2C product, because everyone will be able to relate to it. What is your favorite app?
I go with Swiggy.
Okay, brilliant. So Swiggy right now is having issues with both Zomato and ONDC coming in, right?
Exactly.
So let's say the problem statement is for Swiggy to ensure that their market share does not go down.
Okay.
Now, my bad. If that is the problem statement, now let's start breaking down about what does market share mean. And if you have to build features, it can be a feature or it could just be a very good product functionality, which is not necessarily like a icon on the UI kind of a thing. Then how would we go about that, right? So when you look at if the question is how do we defend our market, what are the things that you believe are the important levers for it? Like what would contribute to that?
Okay. So when you say retaining the market share, does that mean that whatever, say I'm having 33%, for example, I'm having 33% of the market share today. So does that mean retaining this 33%?
For now, let's go with that. Yes.
Okay. So not letting any other of those ONDCs or Zomato's taking in. Okay. So does this mean I'm going to talk about a certain geographical area, like say Bangalore or
A very good question. That would again depend on the data.
okay.
So if the data says that Bangalore is the biggest market and prioritizing Bangalore or ensuring that you have enough control over Bangalore helps you defend your moat, then that is what you should be doing. But yes, that is one step of the problem. Like you start with what are my important levels? So location would be an important lever to look at. Anything else you can think of?
The personas that I'm catering to.
Okay.
So here, why I preferred location. I mean, my question around location as a ask is because, as such, Zomato might not be targeting all the locations that Swiggy is currently catering to, and ONDC as a pilot program might also not be catering to larger. So that I don't see a major potential for them to grab my market share. So that's the reason I'm picking location as primarily, say, Bangalore as the most competitive place where all the three players are going to be as competitive as they are. And the second thing is the persona, the target segment that I'll actually, where I don't want to lose out or because
Got it. Define that with a metric though.
Sure. Say, for example, I'll pick one target segment, like say aged, so bachelors who generally actually order food a lot online.
Okay.
And these are the possible segment of people who they don't have loyalty as a parameter where they just love one thing, right? Unlike your other target segments.
Okay.
So they are the people who just constantly try to go and compare themselves with other apps. I mean, they just want something that is very less pricey and which can come to their home faster. And I mean, there are a lot of parameters around why I will not stick myself to just order in Swiggy.
Got it.
Assuming that I'm on the target segment.
Got it. On the persona front, though, this like demographics could be a way to approach it. The other thing, especially if you're looking at it from a business goal perspective, you would be looking at an average order value. Like there are some people who are ordering like over a month, they may order fewer times, but they are bringing in the money. Right? Versus there are going to be people who order a lot, but all they care about is where do I get the highest discount, so I don't have to pay too much, right? So then you will be prioritizing your persona based on, okay, you know what, this is the average order value is going to be one of the important levers. So when I'm looking at a candidate, what I would be doing is, how can that person break these things down? Do they recognize which are the levers? Do they have the ability to look at the data and say, you know what, I have enough information to make a decision and say, Bangalore in this case is like my most important market to play. And even within Bangalore, there are certain zip codes which bring in the highest amount,
revenue.
right? So if I have to do something, I need to make sure I am retaining my users from this place. So just the ability to break it down and then look through the data, then come up with possible solutions which can exist. And prioritization is one very, very hard thing to do in life, but yeah.
I get it. So you touched upon again few things, right? Like, see, this is Swiggy. This I know, you know, everybody know. I can also bring data and present or data something which I am aware of. Like, so I know this is the pin code and these are the people ordering. This is the average order value of biryani cost, and most amount of people order biryani. So I know very much. But there are some cases wherein you've been thrown upon applications which you might not even know. So in this case, as a candidate, how do I convince you with that I'm backed with something, and how do I present that kind of information to you?
Sure. Happens a lot in B2B enterprise products, primarily because users of enterprise products are not consumers like us. It is going to be like if you're already part of an organization, you would be using, say, something like Zoom. You would be using something like Microsoft. But a PM in Microsoft, a PM in Zoom can't think from a consumer lens.
Right.
They have to think it from a usability lens, a productivity. Most of these are actually productivity products, which means like a person who's coming in today, they are not able to achieve their max for some reason, like either the current product is very slow or it does not cater to certain things. Hence, now you have to understand the problem statement from the perspective of a person who's coming in and their goal is slightly different. Their goal is, I just want to do it faster, or I just want to be able to go in there and find out all of this information. So if I'm hiring for an enterprise product, then there are two things that I would be looking for. The first is just understanding the difference between how a product that you are not using regularly, like how would you understand consumers there?
Yeah.
Because you're not the user.
Yeah, exactly.
So are you able to put yourself in those shoes and work through that? And the second thing is on a lot of these products, especially if you're making that decision that this feature needs to come out, you will get a lot of pushback from your sales team. Because in a consumer app, it's a lot more streamlined.
Yeah.
In a enterprise app, you're going to have requirements coming in from all directions. So in that case, I would say prioritization is an even more important skill if I'm hiring for enterprise products.
Sure. Yeah, I know. I think absolutely. I think everywhere I attend, that's something that they actually look for from a PM to a SPM level, right? Yeah. So how much of this domain exposure is needed? Because I always fail to understand, because a lot of times either they tell you need to possess your product management skills where you've been a APM or you've gone through the journey, or you might have to be functionally very good, or domain knowledge has to be. Like, say, if I want to go just take an interview in a fintech company and I've spent like 12 years in a telecom company, so I myself feel I'm a misfit, or will this domain knowledge really be a concern both from appliant as well as the person who's hiring me? How do I solve this bridge? Like, is it really a must-have skill?
Depends purely where you're applying from. The risk tolerance for a startup is much higher. You don't need to come from that background at all. Versus if you're going to a very established company, because the access to the talent pool that they get, they will always find people with that background. It's a lot easier for someone to transition in who knows the how and why and what of it all to come in there and grow that thing, versus someone who's going to come in new, which means now you have to understand you're competing with those who already have that background and that organization has access to that talent pool itself. So if you're going in there, you have to be exceptionally good at the few things that they're looking for to offset your not previous experience in that domain. But like I said, if you're going to startups, people are a lot more relaxed about it. Then it boils down to, can you solve problems or not? If you're able to solve problem A, the probability of you being able to solve problem B is also fairly good.
Sure. So I've been hearing about stakeholder management becoming one of the key, right? As a product manager, day in, day out, you'll be dealing with every person, like say from the design team to the engineering team to the sales team, marketing, many collaterals in your office typically, right? So, I mean, if you were a hiring manager, what kind of questions would you put up to gauge that I might have worked, or I should have? What is that should have, must have skills that you see? And with what questionnaire will you evaluate if I have a good stakeholder management capabilities?
Got it. I do a general behavioral thing, like as part of the conversation itself, I try to play like good cop, bad cop every now and then. I see how that person reacts. One thing that I do generally ask that person is just mostly from a self-awareness thing, where they have been able to convince a person to change their mind. Like if you're able to do that and you have the ability to do that with other people, because then you will have a lot of your stakeholders coming in having a very strong opinion about something which may be very different from yours. But if you have the ability to convince them to see your perspective, and to some extent even you may have to change your perspective, if you have the ability to do that, that matters a lot, which is why I want people to fall back on their own experience and give me instances where they have been able to make that change, either in themselves or in the other person, preferably the other person. So if they're able to bring out those examples, then I know they're at least in the wrong path. And also during the interview itself, when I'm having a conversation, I try to do the good cop, bad cop. So in those bad cop moments, if they are able to keep their cool, be objective, then I know it's working.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. I mean, thanks for that. Also about for conflict management, for example, say I've just spent very little time. I mean, if I assume that I'm coming from an engineering background, day in day out the conflicts are very less because you are like closely working, and you know how engineering team works, right? You don't deal with external stakeholders a lot. So and then I again believe that this is one of the most important parameter for a product manager. So if I were to tell you that I possess these qualities of where I can manage conflicts and I can put up some frameworks, which I keep doing in my personal life as well. So how do I make it feel to you that I possess those qualities with, I mean, whatever, I don't know what questions will you ask. Firstly, I would like to ask what questions will you ask, and then see how I will be able to, fit into those answers.
If it is about conflict management, I mean, I would probably ask you about cases in your life where you had conflict and how you went about it. But mostly for me, it just boils down to the value system. End of the day, if there are two people who respect each other, I'm sure they will come to some consensus one way or the other. It's only when it's like my opinion is like very important and yours isn't. So those lines between ego and not feeling that the other person's viewpoint is important, those are the cases where things just go down south. Otherwise, doesn't matter whether you're like an engineer or you have a product person or a salesperson. Sure, there can be differences of opinion. As long as people are just being able to be objective about it, it will narrow down. So if you had to like convince me that you're very good at conflict management, I would give you scenarios where I'm going to say like, okay, if you're in this part doing this, what would your reaction be? So let's say you've decided, let's say there's a very big launch coming up, and you as a product manager have decided that, you know what, these are the features that we must go with, because based on all the data that you've heard from your consumer interviews, you know this is what is that they want. And then 2 days before that, a week before that, the sales team comes in and they said, no, this is what we should be doing instead. This is our biggest client. We're going to lose all our money if we don't do this, so this has to be done. Now you have to figure out either how you convince them, or you have to go to your engineering manager and convince that person to make it all happen, which quite frankly never does. So how, like when you're in that situation, what is it that you would be doing? And well, if you have any thoughts.
Oh yeah, I mean, how important of a launch, I mean, definitely you will keep hearing. First thing, as a product manager, I would like to be a listener. First, understanding each one's perspectives as to why sales team is so hell-bent on releasing this. What is that is going to impact as a company? What is the North Star metric that we are seeking? If this sales has to translate to some strategic choices, then probably I would consider and try to convince the engineering manager, rather, telling that if not now, it's not just we are not halting it, but we are taking it probably 2 weeks from now. And because of this impact, we will have more things in our roadmap which will actually make us build more better things. I mean, something of these kind of approaches that I would rather see, if I mean, considering the fact that this sales team deliverable has to go now, okay, because of the strategic choices that the whole leadership has made. So as a product manager, probably I would pick up that. So would it be convincing to you? I mean, if I were to answer this way?
Maybe I would also be looking at the fact that you kind of mentioned that if this is the most important thing, so I would probably be looking at you having, what is it that you did behind the scenes in order to evaluate that?
Yes, definitely.
And also comes down to the fact about sometimes you just have to be decisive without having every little piece of information. And it is in those moments, like, what is your ability? Like, if you walk up to your engineering manager and you say that, you know what, all the things that you've been working for the last 1 month, scrap it. Now we're going to do this for the next 2 weeks. They're not going to enjoy that feeling at all.
Definitely, it's not as simple as it is, because day in day out, I'm into this same position where I have multiple stakeholders who talk to me and telling me that we start with this POC with Walmart, we start this POC with, say, some other A to B company, and then parallelly there's a backlog that is being prioritized in the sprint, and that has to take a toll. And already when there is situations where the backlog has gone fall apart, we have already been complaining. So there is day in day out, this is what a role of a product manager looks like. And typically, as you told, you will always measure what is the most impactful thing that you as a product manager has to take a decision. And it's definitely data backed decision, of course.
Exactly. So when you're in that conversation, you basically sit them down and you tell them that, you know what, there is no easy choice in this, but certain things have to be done. And at the moment, this is what it is. We have the next 30 minutes. We take views from everyone. We either which ways have to come to an agreement. So we agree that we do the sales thing, or we agree that, you know what, while this may be the most important thing, 2 weeks is just not about enough time to make it happen. So then the expectation setting has to be happening. What I will look for in that candidate is, how do they recognize the important stakeholders, and can they do that expectation setting with all of them? And if they can, then sure.
Definitely. So how much of a technical exposure is needed for PMs? I mean, generally B2C, I understand that if you're good enough with some of these tools, you're pretty good and going. But then when you work with enterprise or companies like Microsoft or most of these enterprise companies, how much of technical skill set does a PM needs to possess?
It's always good to have that skill. The reason why I'm saying it, I started my career initially as a Java developer. Once I finished my MBA, I transitioned over. But then for everybody else that I see who don't have an engineering background, there are a lot of conversations that they are in where they don't quite grasp the magnanimity of what all needs to happen. For them, it's like, okay, I have an idea. This is just going to fall into place. A lot of time, people without a tech background don't have that ability. So even if you're not a good coder, or even if you don't ever want to write code, that's perfectly fine. But just being able to understand that, you know what, these are the things, at least at a high level, this is how we approach. And especially now with like OpenAI and even Bard coming out, you don't need to code at all. So, but not knowing certain things just puts you at a disadvantage. Now, do you necessarily want to invest the time to learn it? Is a choice that you will have to make depending on how much your work requires it to be, or how in-depth you want to be in it.
Sure. So some of these few questions, right? So there's something trends in the market. For example, say ChatGPT is out, and then everybody, whichever interview you go, they might actually put you a use case and tell that as a product manager, where will you put into this product, that product, something like that. So there's something trending in the market all the time. So as a product manager, if I were to attend an interview, what are the trends that you would suggest, or something which is core and niche that they should only possess, which other things doesn't matter? Does it work like that, or as a hiring manager, will you do that?
For me, and again, I'm giving a very, very personal perspective here. For me, I like people who keep up with what's going on, especially if you're in tech products. Now, does that mean that you just spend your entire day just hunting through TechCrunch and Product Hunt and so on? Not really. But being aware of what's going on is kind of important, because a lot of these products may help you understand areas that I believed were roadblocks before are no longer roadblocks. Things that I couldn't do before can be done now. So just being aware helps. At the same time, even in product, you need to have a niche and a core. Like anyone in the company, when they look at you, they should be like, if this is the kind of problem that I have, this is that person. Like Rajeshwari is that person that I go to every time when this is that area. Once you have that, then you can keep growing around it as much as you can. Time is a constraint that we all have to live with.
I know.
So, depending on how much time you want to give, take a call.
What's a typical interview if you were to open some positions in your company? So what's your standard procedure? Do you just give some case challenges to do the first round of filtering, or do you just go about and ask your teams to just send across and have somebody else look for? Or so what is the typical thing that you would look for as a hiring manager, or some standards that hiring managers like you follow in the normal market?
Sure. And this is something I've actually learned over time, and because now I'm more towards 0 to 1 kind of products, it gives me the flexibility to do this. In the sense, first I would roll out a case study. Based on how that goes, I generally ask them to do like a 2-week internship kind of a thing. It'll be paid. You don't have to quit your current job also. But I want to see that person showing up at work, doing that thing. And then I gauge, like, do I want to roll it out as a full offer or not? And the reason why I do that now is because I've seen a lot of people have like immense intensity for that one assignment. So they're going to put in their heart and soul and everything in that one assignment. And when it comes to work, it's like, oh, now I have a job. It's okay. So
Absolutely.
that is something that I choose not to do. Now, can I have a similar mechanism had I been in a bigger MNC? Not so much, but that kind of gets fended off in a bigger organization, primarily because there are multiple levels of interview that you'd have to go through, and it is very, very standardized. And those standardization come because there are enough processes that have been put into place, and you know what, if whether this is going to work or not. So if it is for a big MNC, I'll trust the system. The system is there for a good reason. If it is for a startup, I now just go with, I really want to see that person do the work. Otherwise, I don't take it.
One more thing this calls upon, like how much of preparedness is needed? Like, say if I'm attending Synergy Institute, I'm just taking up an interview of your company, and then how much of preparedness, like to what level I should know, is the question all the time. And that again answers my second question. Next time when the final hiring manager asks you, do you have any questions to me? What is relevant? Because that is very subjective way of, I mean, you read some standard books, they give you a standard answers. And I typically don't resonate with those answers because it's very standard and it's like as if you're just asking it for the heck of asking it. But rather on a personal front, if you if I want to feel confident of asking and you would also like the way I'm asking, what should I ask?
A good one, primarily because I get too many candidates asking me those scripted questions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, a lot of those are actually, if you put in just this much effort, you would find the answer to all of those questions. Between the multiple rounds of interviews that have happened, of all the people that you've interacted with, or for that matter, even on the website, had that person put in this much effort, I know that answer would have been known. So when they ask me that question, I'm like, you're clearly not putting in effort. Which is why when they come up with questions, I would want it to be a lot more contextual to whatever has been happening in their hiring journey.
Absolutely.
So if you ask me something about something that happened in round 1, maybe somebody asked you a question for which you didn't know the answer, you gave your version of it. But if you want to hear my perspective on that could be relevant. Or if along the journey you've heard, say, conflicting answers from people and you would want clarification, that I can understand. But if you're going to ask me like generic scripted thing, like clearly somebody's not putting effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty much a good input to people here, because generally we have a kind of normal standard things, right? That when we go preparedness for an interview, we just know that, okay, these are the jargons that are there in our resume. We assume that the interviewer will pick up these jargons and we go with those, and then we kind of, it goes off and we are not really in the game because of a lot of mistakes that these kind of things happen, misalignments that happen. So this is a great input to me as well.
And when it comes to jargon, rule number 1, use that jargon if when people wake you up in the middle of the sleep and ask you about it, you will be able to answer it straight. If it is just a jargon that you've picked up along the way, believe me, 2-3 sentences down, the person on the other side will catch you that you're just using jargons for it.
Right.
So you don't need to know a million things. Know one thing, but know it so well that whenever, like even if you're like in the middle of your sleep and someone wakes you up and asks you something around it, you should be able to nail it.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is like brilliant advice. I mean, I also tell people the same, like, SMEs for one thing matters the most, right? You don't have to do everything, but one thing, what you tell, you should know everything about it. So we're open for questions from the audience. Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm hoping at some point I'm a developer, a Java developer like yourself. I'm hoping that at some point I move to a TPM, particularly that one. What technical skill set is necessary to move to that role? I know that you mentioned that it's a plus, but specifically for this one, what would be a great good help?
She's a TPM.
Yeah, I'm a
Maybe a better person to answer this.
Yeah, I myself am a TPM. So I mostly work from an engineering perspective. So I'm not a market facing person, but I do inbound. I work inbound. So when the skill set that I possess is, since I technically know what's the complexity of building, say I as a product manager, I'm thinking that I want to integrate, say, ChatGPT in my enterprise product. Or I want to build some POCs around what next my product wow features that my product should have. So I'll be very much able to understand what is the complexity of building this, because I come from a background where I can do POCs myself and I know the evaluation technical feasibility. I just don't throw it to the team and tell, no, go build this within this timeline. I need this. I don't do that. I rather evaluate. I am in a situation where I actually can evaluate. I can also tell that I can question the engineering team as to why this cannot be done. I mean, I go with that kind of data and present that in my product, in this 3 months, this is the feature that I'm expecting you to deliver. And this is the data that I'm coming up with, why it has to be built, why it's the need of an hour, why our product should have it, and how my analysis on how this can be built. So I don't have to build, but I need to have this visualized. So that is something that I play in my company. And it's a very good niche skill that not many product managers with non-technical things can come. I mean, very few companies appreciate, but definitely you'll have your own placeholder in a company for that skill.
Just a follow-up question. To be able to transition to this one, even though my journey is going to be of a developer, how do I pick up or how much does this one, my technical background, weigh in when I interview for a PM role, a TPM role?
Absolutely nothing. No. So your interview has nothing to do with your skill set of what you have done.
Work experience.
No, doesn't matter. So I have around 12 years of development experience. I was R&D manager. Like I quit with full development for 12 years. And that absolutely has no, I mean, people appreciate your experience skills in people management, stakeholder management, conflict management, and other things. But your coding per se has no, I mean, something that people don't take it as a point for you to consider for your PM role. No.
Like if I were looking for a TPM, not necessarily how good you code, but if not anything else, like your data structure and algorithm skills, I would still want to have. Like just the ability to even say, this is the step 1, step 2, step 3, this is how you will branch and so on. You don't have to code, but you should be able to think through it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I'm going to start with her because hers went up first.
Thanks, Parna. I love listening to you, especially I was feeling after lunch, maybe I will be sleepy, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think very specific to these days with product management. We do see there is product planners and there is a product marketers. These are becoming even like you need to have that skill. One person cannot do all the job. Even it gets differentiated with okay, are you working on the strategy side or it is more on technical? So as somebody, I'm already a product manager, but now I'm looking at it, okay, which should be my path forward. Not only on the people manager side, but I can do people, I can mentor people, and we are looking for like associate product managers right now. But as I have to grow, so what are your suggestions or what do you think about this whole term of product planners and product managers? Is it like one person can do it all, which everybody wants sometimes, most of the companies want, but keeping in mind that you have to do delivery, you want to wow your customers.
Depends. Yeah. So Is it possible? Yes. Sorry. But it depends on the scale at which you're working. If your organization is already at a point where product marketing is a separate function, there is very good reason for that. And if you are looking for organizations at that scale and bigger, then that distinction will keep happening more and more. Now, what you should be doing, I would honestly say, if you are at that crossroad, talk to people in both functions and see what is it that they do, and also ask them what is it that they hate, because it's a trade-off. End of the day, you are choosing to do something over something else. So have my must-haves. These are things that I don't compromise on. If there is a role which requires me to compromise on this, I will not be a part of it. Everything else, the good to have stuff, just check with them like which of those resonate more with you, and also figure out like whatever they hate, if that is also very important to you, figure out how much you hate it and how much of that you can live with, and go do that. Okay. Have you the lady in orange, please.
So I have a question like how was the interview before for B2C product? So I'm right now playing a B2B product manager. But what I want to understand, if I want to transition into a B2C product company, then what are your suggestions for that? Is the interview process different? Because I'm never got calls from any B2C companies.
You see, that would have been my first question. Like, did you get shortlisted or not? Forget the interview part of it. There's a very big reason, and I'll tell you, there is a very strong bias in India. I've seen that. They are like, if you're in B2B, for you to think like B2C, and that I will admit there is a difference. Which is why they would almost never. So if you even want to get your resume shortlisted, two routes: you look for referrals, or you have projects like side projects, which are like kick-ass side projects, which you can put out in your portfolio, which says, this is what I can do in the B2C space. Okay. Even on B2C, if they are startups, they'd be willing to take a bet on you before, say, stable like a Series C, D, or even higher would want to take a bet on you. End of the day, trade-offs. Which organization do you want to be part of? How important is it for you to be in like a well-known established company? If that is that you're looking for, they have access to a lot of B2C product people. They will give preference to them. So you're going to have to, like, if you're serious about it, you are going to have to put in that effort. You are going to have to convince. Just getting your foot in the door is going to be a fight. The interview part of it, like especially if you've put in that work behind it, like if you've done your side projects on B2C, or if you've like regularly even written, like you don't have to do a project per se, even if you're regularly evaluating B2C products and putting out the content, say on LinkedIn or Medium or something, use that as your portfolio. So if people can see that you are able to put in that effort and think through a consumer facing thing, and you're regularly talking to users, because in B2B, believe me, you will have customer success and sales doing majority of the work. You're barely ever doing that. And to sit in front of a person who may be disinterested in giving you an interview and getting answers through them when they themselves are not clear why they like or what they dislike, that's hard. So unless you're doing that process yourself, there's like someone else taking that bet on you is going to be a little hard process. Okay, I'm going to go with her. She's been like on it for a very long time. Yes.
So actually, apart from what we are handling in our organization, so sometimes we, as a creative innovation field that we're working, to pick up some problems out of this work, right? And you want to work on that. But if you want to make a portfolio out of it in the product management side, the crucial is that you have a POC and some user feedback on that. So, I mean, from technical side, when someone is really working on a dummy project and just put the code and can get the life cycle of the project will be that much. But as a product management perspective, when you're taking a sample project, working on it, but a POC, you have to really have some user getting a feedback. So, how would you suggest really take a side project at a personal level and create that portfolio?
Surprisingly enough, I get these kind of questions in India a lot. In US, nobody asks these. You know why? Because there, having a side gig is very common. Like, nobody thinks twice. Like, of course, you'll go do it. Here, fortunately, now you have platforms also coming up which will make your life very easy. Go to things like Fiverr. They are looking for people who would want to work on projects and they will pay you for it. You just have to do a good enough work, okay? Even if you don't do that, like, almost always I look for people who have like a side passion that they are like driving, like you do your everyday work and you give it your best. I don't want you to be moonlighting at your work, but there has to be something that drives you to want to learn. And if you show that passion through your side project, and if you don't understand, okay, where do I start? Nowadays you have these platforms. You just have to pick a project from there and get it done. Another very good way, which I found very useful, and that was primarily because of my MBA network, I got access to a lot of startup founders. All I had to do was just sit around with them, brainstorm on things, come up with strategy. If you don't have access to that network, that's okay. Now there are platforms. So, I mean, if you want to do it, believe me, there are ways to do it. Okay, I know there are two. I'm going to go with her first and then I'll come to you. Oh, bring my watch.
Yeah, I know.
Podium is big enough.
So, I'll go back to the questions and I'll go back to the question which she asked. Okay, because I wanted to get our knowledge. I don't know if I will talk here. First question was asked, have a feature that is standing out in space. Okay, we did slicing and we did everything, having geography and all of that. But what would be the feature that would stand out to you and you make the category?
Depends on whether I'm looking for a feature or not. The fact that you asked me about which feature is actually the mindset that I see in a lot of people, and my first instinct is like, stop. Because most people want to give me solutions. Like, don't give me solutions. We'll get to the solution at some point of time. Let's first sit in the problem space. Let's figure out what the problem is. Then we would get to the solution. So the entire journey, like if you were having an interview with me, would at least be 2.5 hours. Because I don't do like, oh, let's do 5 rounds of interviews. No, I'll do 1 round of interview. And I would spend about 60% of that where you're going to be thinking through the problem part of it. And you will tell me what data you need. I will give you all the data and I want to see you analyzing it. Once we've nailed down that, you know what, this is the problem, this is how we solve, then we go about features. Feature is just the implementation that people see. And in the bigger scheme of things, believe me, that is no more than 10% of the process.
About the ideation process, right?
So you should have a solution set with you. So once you've gone through the problem statement, you have like, say 5-10 problems that need to be solved. Of that, you would have narrowed it down to like 2 or 3 of them. Then you finalize, say, this is the one problem that I want to solve. The moment you've picked out that problem, you should have your solution space. That solution space is going to have, say, as many ideas that you can think of. In true working organizations, it's never like one PM sitting in their little bubble silo and thinking of ideas. Barely ever happens, or it shouldn't happen. Find people that you're going to be brainstorming with. Block time, everybody shows up. You tell them what the problem is. You give them enough literature for them to prepare and show up. Everybody comes with their stickies. They go about sticking ideas. Then you discuss through those ideas and then you narrow it down. And from that comes that feature that you should build.
I'll just go after the second question. So, is it okay to say that I don't know about this particular enterprise product?
I will tell you 100%, please do that. Everybody who tries to feign knowledge after like 2-3 sentences, I'm like, you clearly did not know the answer. All you had to say was no. And that for me is a behavioral trait that I have a problem with, because when I'm giving you real work, you're looking at me and you're telling me that, of course, this is going to be done. I trust your word for it. if you don't know that and you come back later after like 2 weeks and like, I never knew what you meant, that is a very big problem. So I'd rather know that you're not aware so that we can help you get to that position where you are aware and doing things than to just throw darts in the dark and like, kabhi na kabhi it'll work. Thank you. Yes, please.
So first of all, like, thanks a lot for the session. Like, I had to leave for a second, but as much as I could hear, it was very good thing. So I'm actually a product manager right now for a US-based, actually an SP startup right now. And I've been with them for the course of like from seed to series to almost series B now. And I was their first product manager, sort of grew the entire product team, set up everything, set up the process. But now I'm trying to move it. I'm thinking of moving it to move to like a more mature organization, probably Series C, Series B, just to see a larger organization and come back to C. I personally don't have any certifications or anything to sort of prove what I've done. So every time that I try to write a resume or put something out there to show Series C, Series D startups, I have a hard time putting anything on paper because all I can tell them is like, hey, I grew this to this. Did accounting, did marketing, did everything for a while, but no other. So what would be your take on? Would it be good for me to like do a couple of certifications to show that they actually can do this? Here's the proof for it. What would be your take on it? Do you think it's worth the time to sort of put that into certifications, maybe even MBA?
At least in India, MBA doesn't hurt at all, especially if we are doing it from a reputed organization. Doesn't hurt at all. Now, should you do that or not is a completely different question. I have taken the reverse journey. Like I started in MNC and then I'm like, this is just too stable, too static for me. I need to get to more exciting things. So you're doing it the other way around. Now, I can see why some people would have qualms wanting to shortlist you, primarily because there is a difference. I mean, there's immense joy and beauty in doing scrappy things. Like you said, I have done marketing, I've done accounting, I've been everything everywhere because my job requires me to do that. That's my job right now. It requires me to do that. I'm everything everywhere. But if you're a scaling organization, you want to look for people who have a niche and are very strong at it. So if you are not able to exhibit that behavior for them to say that, you know what, while this person may be able to do everything, I need them to be rock solid in this one thing. In scaling organizations, those little leaks are what grow into like craters and it turns out really bad. So if you've had experience going or like being in that phase where you've done, you've done a lot of 0 to 1 and 1 to 10, but that 5 mil plus kind of a thing, like if you're going ARR revenue types, 5 mil plus kind of a thing, that is where things get hard, things break. Like the small things, which you could just put a band-aid before, all of that breaks. Hence, they look for people who have that experience. Now, if you don't have it, since you're looking for Series C, it is exactly. Surprisingly enough, you may have a better chance of being in your organization doing a Series C, because by then it becomes a Series C, and then you have the experience that you can show. Otherwise, because you've worked in a startup, I'm sure you will have very good connection with your entire leadership. Talk to them and get referrals. That is going to be harder, because for you to now do that transition because all the Series C and D, they are looking to go to E and F. They are looking for people who've done that level before. If you don't have it, for you to build that muscle out, you will have to find a path. An easy path would be referrals. The other path is, yes, go do an MBA. I don't know if certifications are going to cut it. And again, if you're doing CDC, very honestly, if I were in your place, I would be just looking out at founders and at their leadership level. Figure out what is it that they look for. You can make random guesses, like if I have this certification, this is going to fly. Maybe it will make it work. The good thing about smaller organizations that even approach them. A CDC is not necessarily small. They're still like 500 plus, I would assume. But accessible, fairly accessible.
Thank you. Yeah,
All right. Sorry. In constraint of time, we'll take one last question.
Yes, please.
I'm going to assume you've done your market research. I'm going to assume that you already know this is a true problem, the kind of problem for which people pay money. If you haven't done any of that, please start there. And I'm very serious about the people wanting to pay money. A lot of people, if you ask them, is this a problem in your life? Yes. Do you want it to be solved? Yes. When you build that solution, you take it to them, they're like, this is good, but that's okay, I can live without it. So unless you have found a problem people are willing to pay money for, provided you don't want to be a non-profit, then that's different. Okay, now that you're in the for-profit space, especially in today's market, please figure out the unit economics. If you haven't, put in time and energy only in that. The second thing, I'm assuming you're doing tech product. So whether you, okay, no. Not okay. Whichever ways, you should have some usable prototype version of the product that you have. You don't need to have an engineer build that out. For that matter, you can just look for people at you'll find enough and more engineers on an hourly basis who will do it as a side project for you. If you've seen Bard's thing they were for yesterday, brilliant. It'll just push code into GitHub also, give you different variations. You choose which one you like. I'm like, especially for like scrappy level, this is going to do a very good job. So if you want to invest time and energy in that, do that. But if you are the founder who's also thinking through what the problem statement is and how do I take it to people and do user interviews and everything, find someone else who's going to do it for you. Just building the prototype version. If you show up without a prototype, then you're banking too much on people's imagination. That doesn't always work well. Okay, well, wonderful talking to you.